Bob, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for offering the world more words and another book, and it's wonderful to see you. And I have lots of questions as
Oh,
I read
good.
through this
Please.
book.
Okay, let's shoot.
Yes.
Let's
Well,
go
we are
for it.
talking about the environment, and this is what I want to ask you about. Now, you
Right.
use the word realistic a lot, and you talk about a
Yes.
realistic worldview.
Yes. Yes. Right.
And I wondered, now, I want you to help us define what you mean by realistic, and is a realistic worldview under threat when we don't share a collective truth?
Yes. Because to find the real reality as opposed to the illusory, deceiving reality that of the distractions and so forth that we're in. For example, the reality that we're somehow apart from nature. We can head off with Jeff Bezos and Elon and Branson to Mars. After we wreck this planet and make a new one. That's an delusory reality. The real reality is that this planet is an awesome garden of joy
Mm.
if we manage it and fit in with it and love it in the right way instead of exploiting and ripping it apart thinking that we're going to make something better, and which is a delusion. So the real reality, unfortunately, at first we need science to discover the real reality because our natural senses can't see it right away. That is, like, which everybody knows that, like, I see my face as a solid object, but the science says it's atoms, electrons, mostly empty space, zapping around, quantum particles, and I don't
Mm.
even know what it is, but I can't see that. So if I think realism is my native perception of like the solid screen, the solid Krishna over there, my face, then I'm caught in a trapped in a delusory reality where I'm stuck as a separate entity from the world, and therefore I have to fight it off. Actually, kind of, I have to be afraid of it because there's all kind of things could come after me and so forth. If I see through that, and I realize that I'm just swimming in a sea of loving energy in the universe, as is everything else. That's the reality that at first I need science to discover.
Mm.
Enlightenment means science. Buddha is a scientist, and we are all natural scientists. Temporarily we don't step out on the street because it looks empty without checking if there's lights or cars coming. You know what I mean? We don't follow the most naive thing. We look deeper and we examine and investigate. So we have to. That's what I mean by reality. Is the real reality of the 97% of the universe that is supposedly dark
Dark
energy.
matter, yeah.
Yeah, but it isn't. But it isn't dark. It's only invisible.
It's
It's not
unknown.
actually
Yes.
dark. No,
Mhm.
there's two kinds of things you can't see. One is dark because you can't see because it's too dark, and the other one is transparent. It's a transparent energy. It's not a dark. It's transparent. Also doesn't mean bright. It just means that everything is wide open. And that 97% of transparent energy is reality, and it's love. Actually, it's abundant energy. It's blissful. So it's like space. It's being spaced out in that transparency, and that's what I mean by reality.
And how does that relate then? Because you say like nirvana is reality, like nirvana as a
Yeah.
non-duality of actuality of the world. Like, tell us more
Yes.
what you mean by that, because I think
Well,
that
okay,
relates.
okay. Well, I said it, and if I keep saying it, it's kind of meaningless in a way at first. So let me
Mm.
give you a simple inference that we could all make that is really critical here. I can't believe it's so simple. I have
I
stories to
love
tell about
simple. Yeah.
it. Okay, last night you slept, and you were tired. You had been working all day doing great things. You have those wonderful musical instruments back there. You've been doing conversations, podcasts, creating things, but you were tired and you didn't feel like doing it anymore. You slept. Okay, when you slept, you went into darkness. You turned off all the lights. It was dark outside, hopefully, and you put shutters and everything, put blinders on your eyes, and you slipped into darkness. You thought, because that's when you go unconscious, you think it's dark. And subconsciously, because of our materialist science, we kind of think that's a foretaste of the infinite sleep of death, where we will be just unconscious forever. We won't worry about a thing.
Right.
Maybe we don't want to do that because we want to make music, and that's why we're not tired. But when we get really tired in old age, we'll be happy about it because there's no fear of any bad thing in it, so that it's fearless because it's just anesthesia, right? Well, if you were lying in a little bit of foretasted nothing, dark energy, dark matter, where would you? Why would you feel better in the morning? Nothing or nothingness has no energy. It has nothing to give you. Nothing because it's nothing actually. And yet you felt better in the morning when you were doing absolutely nothing. You were not doing anything. Let's not use nothing that way. And where did that energy come from? You're settled into the transparency of yourself and the universe around you. And that transparency is not pulsing with bliss. It's not humming with bliss. The first detection of it by anybody is a kind of hum, but it's not humming because why? It's infinite energy. So it doesn't do anything. It's just itself. But anything that needs anything, it's got it. It's got that energy. It's like it can be fire, it can be wind, it can be whatever it needs to be. And your cells and your microbiome wanted a little something to charge up for the day. And it received this from this infinite transparency, transparent energy, transparent matter. It received it. And you feel great in the morning. Bang, let me go. Let's talk to Bob Thurman. Let's talk to Krishna. So by that inference, what we can say is we have died to the day thousands of times in a normal lifetime, even young person like you, old person like me, many thousands. And yet we always wake up with a new energy and a sustained feeling of vitality. That means that what death is going to be is an infinite vitality embrace. And we will enjoy it as much as we're capable of opening into it. And then we can have further life if we want, or even if we don't want, we can just float there. The point is, if we're really wide open, we're like a Buddha. Everybody's a Buddha when they die for a brief second. And if you're prepared for that, you're there permanently. You're in that reality permanently. And then you become a source for every other being. You radiate to them as much as they need, but never more than they want, but as much as they need. So that's that inference is what links us up to the fact, because we have been totally helpless and we've come back from that. So that links us up to the fact that the underlying deep reality is total abundance of energy, safety, security, and what we might call love. And it's multi-personal love. It's not this God or that God or the other God or goddess only. There could be many of them. It's also other humans, potential moms, dads, friends, lovers. It's like endless,
Infinite
endless
potential.
joy when we can let go enough to be open to it.
And so people naturally say, like, maybe they've touched on these feelings in their lives and they want to know, or they're trying to understand if the way you're describing nirvana is that a choice, or it's something that it is that you fall into, like peeling away an onion, as I hear you describe it. But also there
Yes,
is this level of stepping into it that must be chosen, decided,
right. Peeling an
intentioned in
onion
a way.
is a good simile because when you peel an onion, there's no core in the onion, just tighter and tighter folds, and then there's no core there. So what that means is everything you peeled off is of the same nature as what you're left with. So the onion is just all the wrapping. It's same. So there's no separate thing that you go somewhere else. You see, when Buddha taught nirvana to people, they could not imagine having just stubbed their toe that reality could be great. And so he said, well, okay, there is a freedom. Freedom will be a separation from toe stubbing. And they assumed that meant it was another place, naively not thinking critically that another place outside of this place, what we think is this place, is going to be only a relative place. is not going to be the ultimate nature of anything because it has a boundary and it's not here. Whereas nirvana is everything here. It's like the onion reality. It was everywhere. It was in the peel skin of the onion, not just the skin you can't eat. It's all crunchy, like eating paper. You probably could eat it if you're really hungry, and and that energy is everywhere. So it is very simple. It is a choice in a way, but as it's like when you jump off a diving board, you make a choice to plunge into the water. But actually, if you don't know how to enter the water smoothly, with your hands in front of your head, your face down, head like, and make no little splash to get your gold medal, not make a big ploosh. If you fall flat on your chest or
Yeah.
flat on your face, you'll hurt yourself. And then you'll be scared of the water in the future and never want to jump. So there's a way of learning how to open. It's a gradual learning process. And the human embodiment in the Buddha's Darwinian theory, karma, his biology theory, which is called the theory of karma, the human form is very beautifully adapted to opening gently, lovingly, and feeling the embrace of the universe. If you're a crocodile, if you're a worm, if you're whatever, it's not so easy because you have a very limited vision. You're stuck in it, and you can't. Crocodile can't really adopt a lotus posture, and the tail is really obstructive to a downward dog.
So is that what you mean when you said something in there about the mind attains enlightenment?
The mind of what? I'm sorry.
You said the mind attains enlightenment, meaning like there's a level of discursiveness.
Yes.
It's not
Well,
just about like, the very first section of this or chapter is about realistic worldview. So I mean, you say like
yeah.
you have to step through those levels.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes. Yes. You
it's
have to.
all
You
the
have to
whole system.
gradually. The human being is a gradual, but we have. The point is, if we compare our embodiment to many other types of embodiments that we know, we realize we are much more open than other beings, although there are sort of angelic divinity type forms that are even more open than us in one way, but in another way, they've gone into some spaces that are separated from the full gamut of life. And in a way, they're kind of, there's a problem, but that's a little complicated to explain. But my point is relating to the animals that we know about, you know, they have to just charge in one direction. Do you know what I mean? They have like claws. You couldn't caress somebody or receive a nice, soft, gentle handshake, firm but gentle handshake with somebody if you both had claws or hoofs, you know, and if your skin was a hide or like a rhinoceros or scales like a reptile, you couldn't get a caress. Would be horrible, like chalk on a blackboard. Really, no way. So we have this sensitive into we're mammals, or when we're conceived for almost a year, we're inside the mom, and she feels us the same as her own body, and then we just come out and we're very close to her and we get nursed, and so I mean we are very much into bridging the gap between self and other, between separated individual and the vast universe, that there might be a gentle way of interconnecting with it and therefore opening to it and going beyond the fear. And of course, the ultimate way of doing that is to understand the death process and realize that death is just it's an opening that is beyond the capacity of an ordinary body because it's become so old and so inflexible and deteriorating and so on. Better to get a new one, and then one opens into the vast field of energy, which is the definition of death in the more advanced scientific traditions than our Western materialist one. But we're getting very close to it because we've reached the point where we've discovered the illusion of solid materiality. Our quantum people have analyzed the atom and the subatomic particles so deeply that they realize it disappears when you keep analyzing. And it isn't something reliable objectively that you can grab onto. So, in fact, they realize that your subjectivity is swimming in all the objectivities, and you're swimming. Our mind is what embodies itself to swim, but it is still it's beyond its sort of obstructive solidity. We've realized that analytically, but experientially and emotionally, we haven't developed the methods to do that. Where I do say the mind realizes it, yes, but actually, eventually, one realizes that the mind is the whole body. So the whole body goes with the mind, and it
Right.
isn't that mind has no body. You don't. It's a mistake to go all mind, just like it's a mistake to go all matter. They're a dance between the two, and but they both mutually involve each other completely. And so it's easier to move. Knowing the subtle energy levels and awarenesses of the mind enables one to master the body tremendously. Those high jump people.
Yeah.
The great ones at the Olympics. I'm sure you watch them. Every
I've
happy
seen
person
that
did.
before. Sure. Sure.
They'll stand at the starting point before running to jump. And this one guy I remember used to do it very viscerally. His head would nod, bing, 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 and then and he would go up like that with his head. So he would visualize his body, his mind carrying his body over the thing, flipping the heels and the calves out of the way so they don't brush the bar. And he would set records, like that rippling over the thing because he would do it with the mind first.
So
Anyway, yeah,
yeah, yeah. So when you talk about like, would you think of creativity or things like art and music as a bridge, as a way?
totally,
It's sort of, in some ways, it's a way of bridging that quantum world to our what we think of as
totally,
our materialist world.
totally. Well, the artists tend to be people who are less locked into projecting absolute objectivity into the situation around them. In other words, and what do I mean by that? When you look up at the sky, for example, when you walk outside, you just look up, something like that. You kind of, because the vision field is so distant, can encompass distance so well, you're going into the sky for a split second. And how do you control that? Well, you say, oh, that's the sky, and I just saw it. In other words, you conceptually capture what you have a label for sky, which doesn't encompass an infinite expanse, of course, but it shuts you off from it, actually. And then I'm not sky. And my surface of my eye and my optic nerve and my brain, it's all not sky. I'm processing, blah, blah. So you start recognizing everything with your concepts. And there's a split moment of, because a human has this amazing expandability. Like when a human being, a single individual expands with a beloved, with a lover, and they feel they're both, or a mom with a child, or a person with the team, or even, sadly, persons with a mob for good or ill, and they kind of lose their sense of, they identify with the whole group. And that's a human ability. That's our natural ability.
Mm.
So that's what I mean by the person who is less quick to just see what they expect to see, because their concept wraps itself around every object they encounter so fast. They
Mm.
never kind of observe it. Maybe it's something else. Maybe there's more to it. It's just a glass over there, and then bam, they stop looking at the glass because it's already been filed away, kind of. So it keeps chopping up the flow of our experience, where we're all in a kind of zone of having everything is fresh and new because we don't even know what it is, in a sense of it's something. I looked at the cover of this book 100 times, but this time I'm looking at it is the fresh new time. If I don't immediately label, read the words, like know what it is, bang, a huge history goes and clumps itself over the perception. So, so the artist is the person who's a little. So maybe they were dyslexic when they were young. Maybe they didn't just get completely grooved their brain into routinized imagination, so they can somehow observe things and then imagine them some other way, and then that really makes them happy. They find pleasure in that, and then they automatically reproduce that, want to dwell in that, and they paint it or they sing it or they try to describe it with words which is impossible to describe, but they cover a facet or whatever. However, they reproduce it, they photograph it, make a movie about it. It's all fresh to them, and like actors can be different people. They identify with a person that they imagine because they're not so rigidly stuck in just being themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore artists are a bridge. And when you emphasize freedom, when you challenge yourself of investing your preconceived ideas onto everything that you encounter, and you sort of try to investigate it more and say, well, it doesn't fit exactly, this is something new about it, which is sort of the way it happens at first, and then eventually you may be able to actually directly see something, directly eat that apple without analyzing the apple and going on and on about it, and in other words, living separated from your deed in the mind's reproduction of the deed, put it like that. And the imagination is the bridge that artists avail us of, a new imagination, to be more open to seeing dimensions and things. Like Emily Dickinson looks at a drop of dew on a leaf in the early morning, and she sees a little lantern on the streets of heaven, right in that drop of dew on this flower petal or on the leaf of this thing. And then we read the poem, and then we've seen drops of dew dozens of times. Oh, yeah, there's a drop of dew. And then we rush off to do our trip. But when we read her poem, oh, next time we see a drop of dew, oh, yeah, we kind of get a new little angle of it. But then, of course, we immediately clamp it and we say, oh, yeah, Emily Dickinson. And I'm busy. And then we run off, So that's the point. So all of this is a method. Buddha said this. He said, that was what was so great about him. He said, oh, I know everything by experiencing it totally. And it makes me so happy when I fully experience it all. Stop that. No.
What?
Will you please don't do that to me, whoever you are. I'm sorry. I didn't know that was on.
Oh, they're trying to get you, trying to reach you.
I don't know how it is on. This is really bad. So anyway, but then he said, but unfortunately, I can't explain it to you. He said, nothing I can say will help you get there if you just want to grab onto what I say. He said, that's really cool. Instead of saying, I have the theory, I'm going to tell you what it is. He said, I can't explain it, but I can encourage you. You can experience it, and actually you already do. And I can help you have methods of peeling off the onion of your whole notion of yourself as trapped in a bad situation, which cultures reinforce in you so that you'll believe in them and do their whatever work they want you to do. And you'll be bound to them because they'll tell you you're not free, you're stuck here, we own you, you're in this caste or you're in that place, and you have to do this and do that and believe this and believe that. And later somehow maybe you'll be fine, you'll be free in the arms of God or the arms of Goddess or in nothing. You'll be free in nothing. That's what they tell us nowadays. And we are, unfortunately, too many of us believe that. So Buddha says nobody can tell you what, you can experience it yourself. Open your amazing human mind and brain and body and feel it, and know that you feel it. So that's really good.
Yeah, and I mean, I love the idea that it's falling into what is, and I think that's a relief for probably a lot of people. And does that relate to when you talked about the noble truth of the cessation of suffering? And that phrase, I was hoping you could unpack that a little bit for me. The noble
Okay, yes.
truth
Well,
of the
I
cessation of
wanted,
suffering.
yeah, I renamed the noble truths,
Fun
which were
facts.
properly termed by Buddha.
Yeah.
I mean, just for the moment, I renamed them or alternatively named them because noble does sound a little bit like aristocratic, which
Mm-hmm.
he did on purpose in his era because he redefined what noble meant as someone who's altruistic. And there's a cognition, as we open as beings, the healthy opening that everyone really does normally in most societies, even with the overall depressing worldviews that society ingrains in people. But everyone does open to the extent that they realize that their well-being depends on others, and they remember that mother experience if they luckily had one that they can remember, where they were nursed and they were cherished and they were caressed and cooed and gooed and gagaed over, and they remember that, and they have this basic social thing of knowing that their happiness depends on the happiness of others. If they go around creating bad vibes of others toward them around them, they're going to have a bad time. So that's already a gesture of enlightenment. That is the opening type of
Mm.
thing that is just normal altruism. But there is a degree of it where it comes where you kind of empathize with another person. Through love, you fall in love, or as a mom, you love your baby in a certain way where you feel you are the baby. The baby, of course, empathizes with the mother. She or he thinks the mother is themselves, and therefore they grab that breast like it was just a part of their own reality. I mean, they don't worry about pinching it, and until they begin to figure out there's some other nervous system. But point is, that's what noble meant by Buddha. He redefined noble from the caste noble that he had been born as. And he said, noble means when you feel the life of the others as equal to your own at a certain stage of awakening. And you awaken that more than normal people. But everybody does it to some extent anyway. And so I call them friendly facts. And the truth thing also I changed because truth is what people think religions have, which are some dogma that you're supposed to just believe and repeat it, and then you're all okay. Like calling the name of God or Jesus or Buddha or Krishna or whoever it is, and that's fine. That's all you need to do. But that Buddha says no. Saying a name will not get you there. If you have confidence in that there's a positive being in the universe, that's good for you. Whether it's you think of it as God or Buddha, whatever you do, because then you feel you can unite with that or even become it in a more radical way, and that's what you should do. And then there's a method of doing that. So I call them friendly facts. So the point is, first friendly fact is if you don't open, you're going to be frustrated. So don't think that when you get to be president, king, a billionaire, go to Mars, be a famous movie star, whatever it is that you want, don't think that's going to solve your problem of yourself being lesser than the vast universe, because it won't. Because there's infinity is vaster than any finity, then basically, because it even incorporates the finity, even so makes finity into an illusion. But so don't think that that's all that is. That's just create motivation. Then the analysis of the attributing reality to unrealities based on conditioning. And then the prognosis is the third friendly fact, which is that nirvana is here and now. But four, no wonder you can't get that right away because you don't know how to dive off a 10-meter diving board. You'll hurt yourself and go smack. So you have to learn how to do that dive, starting at 3 meters and 2 meters, and going up from there. And so that's the path which the book is about, the Eightfold Path, right? The fourth one. But the fourth one is not actually the cause of the third one. The great thing that's really the heart of the whole book is that the third one is the reality right now, and our suffering and our problems are less real. So we can have faith that we will find the real reality because it's more durable. It's always been there. Actually, it's there it's the default. If when the thing stalls, when it crashes, that's where you land because it's the default reality. Is goodness, love, light, transparency. It's invisible because it isn't light as opposed to dark. It's light where you're just as light as the thing you see because you're equally transparent, and so in a way, it doesn't blow you away. Although the boundaries of it, as you get near it, you feel blown away. Yes.
Well,
Okay.
did you write this now in the last couple years because of all the tumult and change and transition that's happening? Because most people on the face of it would say, well, it doesn't feel like reality is intrinsically good or the bliss is always right here for me. It seems like there's more chaos around
I
me.
know. I know. Well, it's true. There is more chaos because our leadership actually because no, not I shouldn't start with the leadership. There is more chaos because more of us are getting more open and enlightened. Our arts emanating actually from our more pursuit of happiness culture, which has sort of spread, actually. I mean, ExxonMobil is not conquering the world; it's destroying it. But actually, Michael Jackson kind of conquered it until he destroyed himself in a way. But otherwise, everyone was in love with him worldwide. For example, and
Yeah.
and etc. Other types of artists like that who gave themselves to the flow, but then they didn't know how to navigate it, so they banged into things and it harmed them. But before that, everyone loved them, and they showed that the vitality because they touched this deepest vitality that people felt in their own hearts. That's why they loved them, you see. And our arts did that because we have the one thing through our brutal, confused, and in some ways mentally backward culture, and scientifically not quite balanced culture. But in the middle of it was this idea of the individual can find happiness, and we should be allowed to pursue it. And democracy means that the individual is paramount over the collective. And that's very impossible. As Churchill said, it's the worst possible form of government, except for all the others.
Yeah.
Which was where he was himself. For a horrible imperialist that he was from before, he sort of realized that that's why America has had a certain energy, because it was enlisting all the energy of its people, which democracy can do. But anyway, that's a side thing. The key thing is it is like that, but because most people in the world are more happy, therefore, they're taking with a grain of salt the dominating type of order suppressing forces in the culture. The guys who were least cool and least happy have risen to the surface of leadership. And therefore, they're acting like they still have the levers of control over everybody, which they don't. So, therefore, they are doing ruinous things with the people. And the people, it's like the artist doesn't want to be president because they love doing their painting. They love me singing their song. But some guy who can't sing and can't paint because it's like defective, he's got to be president and kill the artist, even if unless the artist somehow wants to pretend to be owned by him or her. They can be really bad. And so we have the really bad leadership, like the whole Afghan war. We're now in this complete crisis of of Afghanistan going down the drain. But that's because our leadership didn't listen to people who knew the story of Afghanistan. They were perfectly allowed to knock out bin Laden, but the people who helped them do it, I met the Black Ops guy who was there with Massoud, the Lion of the North, and helped him with the targeted bombing and working with the Northern Alliance, pushing out these Pakistani religious fanatics and Pakistan trained religious fanatics who we had empowered in our stirring up of religious fanatics in Pakistan, aiding their generals to do that, their ISI, to go in and attack the Russians there. And so this blowback, that the guys who got rid of the terrorists there told us, great, you got rid of them. You helped the Afghanis do it. They like you right now because you got rid of these fanatics. Don't land here and occupy the country or you'll be the enemy. You'll be like the Russians and you'll be like the Taliban, and then they'll hate you. Don't land and occupy the country. But who did Cheney listen? Bush was always, playing dice or something. So he'd do whatever Cheney said, and party boy. And so
Nice.
Cheney didn't listen, and he lands. Then not only does he land, but he doesn't finish the job by dealing with Pakistan, where they all ran off and they're funded by Pakistan, those people. Pretend that Pakistan's our ally. So stupid. So he doesn't even finish the job, then rushes off and attacks Iraq. And then left this nonsense of 20 years of $1 billion and building up these people who, the minute we left, they just dropped their guns and tried to run away that we had given them. Because the point is, the Afghani attitude is, anybody who tries to occupy our place, who doesn't speak our language, who doesn't have our religion, they can forget about it. So they probably, the people in the Afghan army, the warlords and all those people, They were nervous having their own wives and girlfriends educated and telling them what to do. So they didn't feel like they were going to defend them, actually. So it is a catastrophe. But it was started by Cheney and Bush by landing there against the advice of the U.S. people who spoke the language, lived with the people there, helped them get rid of the Al Qaeda, and then said, but don't land because then they'll hate you, which is what happened.
So that's definitely part of a larger
So anyway,
picture
I'm
of
sorry,
change
I've
and
got
chaos. No,
sidetracked. I
no doubt.
apologize, I got sidetracked. But listen, here's the main answer: because the leadership is bad.
The
So
leadership is bad.
Afghanistan is just another lesson to us that we should have learned in Vietnam, which is war is obsolete because people are too happy on this planet. They're just ready to die rather than to be bossed around, and they're going to resist any of these freak fanatics. And you watch China, the KGB, which wouldn't let Russia break free, which the Russians really wanted to be free during Yeltsin's era, and then they were totally having fun. Mickey Mouse and Coca-Cola and parties and dancing and never mind, communist ideology and Marxist crap. They wanted to have fun, but then KGB jumped in there and grabbed them back, and China is trying to keep grabbing people who now want to have TikTok, and they just showed that they're fake. They just busted them. All the people who are being brilliant and making money and doing TikTok and having fun, they blasted them, cost themselves trillions of dollars in order to keep their paranoid control, which they won't be able to keep because Chinese people like to party just like you and me.
Sure.
Every human being does. So actually, we're in a great place on the edge of chaos. And all we need to do is realize that bliss is the answer. Happiness is it. Happiness is the way and the method. Follow your bliss, as Joseph Campbell famously said. You know, and that's what we have to do, and we have to follow it where we realize that we're not going to harm anybody else. We're going to be not violent. We're not going to be coerced into being violent. And if other people are violent at us, well, we will laugh at them. And this is the human thing, of course, which is going to be difficult for us all. And that is, if we know initially by inference that death is bliss and human life is bliss too, that means we won't A, jump into death, but B, we won't give up our bliss of gentle, loving, nonviolent, full energy life, full bore living. We won't give that up even on the threat of death. And therefore, the people who dominate you by scaring you that they're going to kill you will be finished. They won't do it. They will have to finally give up and join the party. There's no way out otherwise. Look at Joe Biden. Joe Biden is a sell-it-all politician for 50, 40 years, and now he's trying to join and dance with Kamala Harris and AOC. And he's trying to drag Nancy and Joe Manchin with him, but it's not easy, and he may fail. But he's changed so much. He's finally realized in his old age what a nonsense it was, not listening to Anita Hill, and putting that moron in the Supreme Court, beating the drum for Iraq because the donors, the financial people wanted to make money having a war, etc., and distract people from the fact that the government is making them miserable by going and saying some enemy is making you miserable, which has been the game of bad leaders in history.
But these are definitely outside forces, and I have a lot of agreement on that. But what would you say, like this idea of pursuing your own bliss and how that's different than sort of a Jeffersonian model of the pursuit of happiness, which could be seen as destructive to the collective?
Yes, it can.
Because,
Well, you see, the reason that the pursuit of happiness, when it's defined as egocentric hedonism,
yes,
is the first problem with it is it's not that hedonistic. The person who, I used to have a thing with some of my students where I would challenge them on Shantideva's great statement that all suffering in this world comes from seeking your own personal happiness to the exclusion of others. And someone would eventually, when it would be a brave student in the class, a brave one would finally say, I'm sorry, I like my masturbation, they would say. And I said, oh, really? I said, then why are you looking for a date on Saturday night? And then they would kind of hem and haw, like, why you got your own hand? That's your lover right there. What's your problem? And then people would giggle and they'd turn red, flush red. And then finally I would tell them they should go see a sex therapist, because the real joy only comes when both are joyful. You can't do it when one is using the other. They're going to get somewhere, but then they want more because they'll be frustrated. Neither one will reach that place of zoned out bliss that is really peace, where they don't need more. They really, for temporarily, they drop out of the quest of more, because it's clear whenever you're having great fun, when does it end? Oh, how much fun am I having? Is it good enough? Never. It's never good enough. So that happiness is not only is it not worth being pursued, in other words, a pleasure opposed to pain, which therefore is disregarding the pain of others. In other words, it's a closed, self-closing kind of pleasure. It's not very strong pleasure. We've seen a certain person who's proud of how many women's private parts he's grabbed in his life, and shouts about it with joy and delight. It doesn't resign from anything. But the point is, he obviously never enjoyed anyone that he ever had. He had some pretty beautiful women friends, but he couldn't be satisfied with any of them. Why? Because he didn't feel the opening, streaming, he didn't get into the zone himself. He was sitting there thinking, he was narrating himself. Oh, I got a new one now. I can do this and I can do that. And it's all me and this and that, and then throw them aside. So he never opened to real happiness, to bliss, in other words. That's why I'm not talking happiness, I'm talking bliss. That's where you're blown away. When you're blown away is before you turn around and evaluate how blown away was that. Oh, no, I prefer the Rolling Stones. The Beatles are boring. Oh, no, I want heavy metal. Oh, no. In other words, put an end to it, when your concepts come and clamp on it, when your ego concept comes in and clamps on you, when your ego finds the joy of being one with the other and get ready to give itself away, that's bliss.
I hear you almost defining it's like dualistic bliss when it's just about you, and when it's sort of recognizing that everyone's bliss, is your bliss. There's one bliss.
That's right.
And
you're in the zone.
Yeah.
And then you're in. It's like the runner, who hits the zone, and when they're in the zone, they don't even know they're running. They don't count it. They don't feel it. They have a different energy because everything's working like they're asleep. They're not running. Oh, my muscle, and their mind is not distracted. They're 100% with the motion. Or the great artists, when they're playing their piano or doing whatever they do, and they're losing themselves in the music. The great drummer who's just lost. It's one Japanese one. That guy, I forgot his name. He's he's an icon, an idol in Japan. He often dislocates his shoulders during his drum concerts.
Wow.
And he has to go to have a doctor and put them back together again, tape them up. He gets so into it, he just goes wild, and it's hurt. He goes beyond the ability of his body, and so that takes a kind of special developed personality, which everybody does. Look at how people are with TikTok and Instagram and those reels that you see on Instagram where everybody's doing some steps, and they're walking across the street. Suddenly they break into steps, and everybody wants to be an artist instead of just walking across the street, and they're ready for it. And that's the mass of people. So therefore, unfortunately, they're very manipulable by the uptight people who they just want to own the Pentagon. They want more dollars. And what are they going to do with the dollars? You can't even make a nice mattress out of a stash of $1,000 bills. Jeff Bezos could have $1 million bills if there was such a thing printed, fill a mattress with it and roll in it, and it wouldn't give him any pleasure at all.
Well, I know you're short on time. I would love to ask you two last questions, if that's
Please
okay.
do, please do.
All right.
And by the way, I don't know if you ever do that, but I'm happy to meet you again. I didn't know about this doctor's thing when I made this hour because I love to run over if I'm having fun with a good friend, as I feel you
Oh,
are from our past meetings with the beloved Ramdas, our one
yes.
saint. And Ramdas was a saint not just because he knew about Hinduism. He met that guru, but before that he blew himself out with
Yeah.
entheogenics, and he opened his heart, and therefore he was able to resonate with someone. But the problem with entheogenics, it's only temporary. Then your old patterning and conditioning comes back and regrooves your brain. And so he met someone who had done it by yoga, by yogic method, by deep inner Indian science of the mind, and he realized there's a way of being like that all the time. And then he became the student and disciple of that person and received the blessing, and he actually became a saint.
But psychedelics are useful for experiential knowledge, I would think, versus just faith.
Definitely.
It gives you a sense of like, oh, I actually experienced something that can give me a lighthouse of sorts.
Exactly. And it also breaks down that my whole life is captured in the narrative that I was brainwashed in first grade through college. That you have to go make money, I have to be a
Yeah,
big boss, I have to be famous, I have to have status, I have to
that's
do
what it
this, to
did
do
for
that.
me. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It
Yeah.
breaks that up for a moment, and then you see the world you never observed without immediately splattering it into your own conceptual grid of preconceived ideas, and then it closes up again on you. But and then the unfortunate procedure is just to keep taking more chemicals. But the
Right.
good one is then to realize, find the higher science, which is really India's thing. It doesn't matter Buddhism, Hinduism, Jainism, whatever you call it. India was the source of it in Eurasia. China and Japan and Korea, these other people have Sri Lanka, but India is the real source. And then you learn how to really do that. And then for decades, all of those people who were moved in that way, they had to keep under wraps about psychedelics because they would get arrested otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because why? The army, militaristic, uptight, nasty people who never turned on in any way and are stuck in their narrative of white supremacy or military glory or American exceptionalism or Protestant ethic or whatever it is, Puritan thing, have no fun, but that makes you holy if you're miserable. I mean, then those people took control actually for a long time, but now their control is melting. So it's actually a good sign that they're so incompetent. And we received the blessing of the most impossibly incompetent possible person taking the most dangerous and difficult job in the country in full view every day, completely deer in the headlights, 100%, no matter what shouting was going on. Didn't know what to do and where to go and which pussy to grab, had no idea. And we saw that. And then we realized, gee whiz. And some people, of course, are still trying to live in denial of that obvious teaching. And there are some people promoting that denial because they're unhappy themselves. They having no fun. So anyway, never mind.
Well, let me summarize my last two questions into one
Yes.
question because I know
Okay.
you
Okay.
got to go. You met His Holiness the Dalai Lama in your young 20s. You were both in your young 20s, and I'm curious what advice, looking back now, you'd give yourself. But is that advice the same advice you would give to people now in the young 20s, going through this intense time that we are in?
No, I think His Holiness has learned a lot since then, actually, because one of his greatnesses is that he knows that you don't know, or as they say in Buddhism, you know by the path of not knowing, which is not just being stupid ahead of time.
No, it's beautiful.
It's using your critical knowledge to unwind itself into where you're beyond having to know or not know, and in a way you do know by being what you know. It's a non-dually, you could say. So he would give the best advice, because by the time I knew him, he had received the best advice. But neither he nor I would say at that time, completely understood what advice we would give, because we were just passing it on. And he has come way ahead. He's 6 years older than me, and also he's way ahead of me in past lives, etc., I'm sure. So he has learned really to occupy what he knew more than I have. And I discover things that I know now that I said then without knowing a lot. Like I can't even believe that when I got my PhD, I didn't say I was getting it in Buddhist studies in a department in the university that didn't have a degree in Buddhology, which I wrote on my cover. I said, I'm getting its degree in Buddhology. And the people in the thesis defense, the department, they were looked at each other and said, we don't have a field called Buddhology, they said. But one of them defended me, and he said, well, maybe we do now. So then they graduated me. But that's a big difference, you see, because Buddhist studies means you study Buddhists. And then you think you're smart and Western and modern, and Buddhists are some religious, superstitious, backward, pre-modern people. And the Buddha himself was pre-modern, and he didn't have a PhD, so he couldn't be enlightened. Because you think you're enlightened because you have a PhD, which is a big fat joke. Believe me. And so, but Buddhology means the study of enlightenment, of an enlightened being, or in case there is one, even though modern people don't really believe there is, they just think whatever they are is enlightened, but they're wrong, and they're beginning to find that out, and then more and more people are finding it out, and they have a global brain, Facebook, and fiber optic cables and internet, and brilliant thing, so you know every suffering of every being everywhere, and the nice one want to fix that. I can't believe Haiti. What is it about Haiti? They're on the fault and they get endless hurricanes. It's just so much. And we all know about it, and we all know, here we go again. But we all have to fix it for them somehow. Help them fix it. Put the trees back. I think the trees will stop it. Because they cut all the trees. That's the fault of the French, not the fault of the Haitians so much. But never mind. Anyway, so I don't want to distract. So that's the thing. And nowadays, His Holiness at 86, he recently wrote me a note, actually, because I just had my 80th birthday. And I had a note from him that is so extraordinary. I just have to repeat this one sentence he said after congratulating me. He said, I, too, am in good health and full of joy. And I can do that at 86 years of age because of altruism. It's altruism that lifts my body and holds it into good health and gives me the joy to try to share reality with others. Now I'm adding, he didn't say quite so many things to that, but all he said was, I too, I was so complimented and so grateful that he said, I too, it made me cry, makes me cry in a minute. He says, I too, because he had just said, congratulations, you're 80 and you're inspiring a lot of people. That's really nice, so keep it up, he says to me. And then he says, I too am in good health and full of joy because it's altruism of serving others that gives me that good health and that joy, he said. And that's the key. You see, when you think happiness is gotten by pursuing just your own happiness at the sacrifice of everything, nature, other animals, other people, that's not real. That won't be a satisfying happiness. That's the only point. But that you put the word there even is good. And it gives some people and some artists and people to discover altruism, that true altruism is the real key to happiness. And by the way, and I want to correct one thing here that everybody has. My artistic friends, they will tell you, oh, Picasso was egotistical. Oh, the artists Da Vinci was crazy. Or every artists are very egotistical. Don't tell me they are altruistic, but that's completely false, you see. They may have shown a surface of protecting themselves. the ones who we remember because they were successful, able to keep making their paintings and do things. But the source of the power of their art is that they let themselves go. They gave themselves up to the art. They give it up, and their ego is strengthened by the altruism. That's the whole point. The artistic ego, seeking selfless pleasure, spontaneously wants beauty to go to spread. It wants others to feel the same heart that they feel. And it's not a conscious thing. They don't paint that painting because I'll make a bunch of bucks on this painting. They're not sitting there like that. Anything great in the painting, anything great in the painting, in the music, and the song is when you get the chill up the back of your neck that raises your hair on the top of your head when a great singer sings, like Aretha, Respect. It's because she's just right. It's coming right out of her heart spontaneously. And then those kind of people, maybe some managers and some fans, will push her around who feel overwhelmed by the power of that love. But so then they might behave in a way people would think was egotistical. But the point is, it's a wrong analogy. Ego versus altruism. No, ego, when mobilized by altruism, becomes a joyful, powerful, more powerful. Not, it doesn't get destroyed, but the altruism reaches a point where you can't even tell the difference between yourself and another, and your heart is what produces it spontaneously. The beauty opens the other's heart to the beauty, and then the other enjoys what you're doing. It's tricky, but it's key. The Dalai Lama says brilliantly, he has said it for years, and by saying it for years, he's come to know it more and more himself. By saying it and by feeling it, it is, you want to be successfully selfish, meaning be really happy, then be altruistic and compassionate. When you open your heart to compassion, the first, meaning wanting others to be happy, the first person who successfully gets the happiness is you. The other might think you're bothering them. You know what I mean? So I mean, he's the best. He is the sweetest. I too am in good health and full of joy, and this is possible at 86 because of the power of altruism, of serving others. He wrote that sentence in his note to me, and I don't know, what a great man, really. And actually, all of his people, his culture, that Tibet delivers that. And at least they had a good leader. Who didn't put them to war, who teaches them nonviolent resistance, even to being invaded and genocided, and instead of being resentful and living on hatred. And therefore, the world leaders must listen again to him. Angela Merkel did. She was strongly devoted to him. And the worst leaders at the moment in the world, Chinese Communist Party, are the only ones who've never met him and who have some completely paranoid concept about him, and therefore about their own people and about the other people and about TikTok or Alibaba. They just freaked out by a wealthy fellow Chinese freaks them out. And that's sad. That's very sad. Okay, thank you so much.
You gotta go, Bob.
Wife,
thank you. And
my better half, well, not better half, my whole real, wife, partner, my guru, Gurini. It will shoot me if I don't run right now to the car.
You can run, and thank you, Bob, so much. It's an honor to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. It's an honor to talk to you. I hope you call me again.